Hello, today I'm Paul Buyak, and I'm going to talk about one of the biggest performance traps that executives and leaders of companies are facing today. It's one of those things that everybody really feels deep inside, but needs to be said out loud. And hopefully, it provides some assurance and push forward for investors, executives, and board of directors to make it okay to really follow more risk. We live in a world today where there is a lot more risk taking that is needed, especially with the amount of technology that is coming out and coming to the forefront. Not just generative AI or LLMs or other AI components. That's only one slither of it. You have quantum computing, you have DNA computing, you have nanotechnology, all these technologies on the cusp of exponential growth. And in an era where there's multiple technologies, multiple process technologies, multiple avenues that are going to challenge companies, executives and boards and investors, and particularly investors, and how you view companies really is going to have to color your view of what the future looks like. Think of Elon Musk talking about his grand vision, but also at IBM or Microsoft or Boeing or Raytheon or McDonald's. You have to cross that line from the extraordinary SpaceX to the regular boring burger chain. And I think we have to really look into harnessing that. So it's really a performance trap, and the title of this presentation is Why Traditional Metrics Are Sabotaging Your Next Generation of Leaders. It is imperative. I'll give you a quick example before we continue with the presentation. Walmart CEO stepped down saying that that Walmart needs somebody more energetic to take over this AI transformation. It's a very interesting thing to say that you need somebody with more energy. It's because there's a lot of uncertainty and there's a lot of risk, and you don't want to sit there and set future teams up for failure, and including your team that is currently working on implementations or driving the strategy of your company forward. I think that it is very important for executives, boards, and investors to really harness that um, and go with it. So we're making a quick 20-minute case on this. I want you to really absorb some of this information. Think about it. Have the conversations with your teams of investors, boards, executives, etc. And I really want you to embrace the fact that the era that we're entering in is more, it requires a lot more risk appetite. So the question really is, and it's something as a food for thought exercise, your top performing executives might be the biggest threat to your company's future. What that really comes down to is you're hitting your quarterly KPIs. You have those same rigid metrics punish the strategic risk takers for necessary long-term survival. When you have exponential technology growth and you're not really certain how to implement it, that risk taking is key, because otherwise the person or the company that hits the technology and the process correctly, you will be too far behind. It's not in the previous era where, okay, Royal Dutch Shell did strategic planning with scenario planning, and you were able to go to meet with a couple of professors at IMD and spend quarters learning on how Shell put this together. In the modern era, like today, you'll have to sit there simply. You find out something new happened. You meet the same weekend with a professor or a educational consultant that encapsulates and breaks down how this process worked, and you implement it on Monday. That it has to be that speed. But the only way you're going to achieve it is through speed. And with the way you're going to achieve speed is through the willingness to have risk taking. I think investors in general punish They'll sit there and be super excited about SpaceX, talking about going to Mars and spending trillions of dollars. But McDonald's says, "Oh, we're going to sit there and revolutionize how we make burgers, and we're going to spend all this money to sit there and invest on how to make things better within our organization." They don't get the same reward. And I think companies have to get that reward. And it just comes down to different levels from investor board and executive teams to really embrace that risk. Rewarding short-term safety while ignoring systematic talent gaps uh, right under our nose is one of those things. It's unspoken. I know every executive that is listening to this, you'll agree, and deep down inside you'll know it's true, but it's being said out loud. And the reason why I'm broaching this topic is because it's been something that's been fascinating me for many years, for almost 26 years now. Ever since I saw how management makes decisions and how they went about making those decisions, and it perplexed me because you see a lot of really smart people and they make decisions that just really should not be made in the light of the context of where the company is going. The three uncomfortable questions that you have to ask yourself around this. Each one attacks a belief most boards treat as settled, and it's because it's spoken behind closed doors amongst different peers. That's why it appears as settled. What if data you trust to measure success is blinding you to a leadership crisis? By prioritizing immediate low-risk wins, we are strangling the next generation of strategic thinkers. Why do you think you have a lot of greats like Andrew Carnegie, Vanderbilt, Howard Hughes as an example, Daniel K. Ludwig, Alfred Sloan, a lot of the leaders in business throughout history, Vanderbilt is another great example. They took calculated risks at any given time and adjusted to the new technology. I mean, think of Vanderbilt in going from sail ships to steamship economics, not just localized shipping, but more grandiose globalized shipping. Then switching over to rail lines, and that was a completely new industry at the time. We are entering an era of just rapid growth in exponential diffusion of technology. So you're the whole, and the one thing I want to get across to investors in order for you guys to back teams is you have to really understand that risk, it needs to be rewarded now. And we have to find creative ways to create new methods of financing these ventures, and also understanding that there's going to be a considerable amount of unsuccessful projects. We're entering an era where a lot of this has not been formulated, but it needs to be done at the same time. It's uncertain, but needs to be accomplished. And then the other next question is, what if hitting Q2 no longer predicts surviving Q4? That's the level of exponential change that is coming. So there's really two tracks. Not only do you have to be, you have to, when I'm saying that you have to go a little bit more riskier, I'm talking about long-term investment, literally not just focusing on Q1, 2, 3, and 4, but really putting out a vision that is 5 years. And you can work towards a vision of what your business will look like. That's not going to involve, making the narrative, oh, AI is replacing employees. You're going to need, you're going to have to come to the realization that you're going to really have to bring your employees on board, your suppliers on board, your customers on board, and all your internal and external partners on board. This is going to be a very big challenge, and is one that hasn't really been addressed in companies. We know that this goes on because we've had evolutionary adjustments, and a lot of it's been really written in leadership literature about the different, most mergers and acquisitions are failures. They don't get the synergies, the anecdotal evidence that is out there. And I think we have to take solace in that and understand that why this is happening. So if you're asking yourself, what if yesterday's performance data is a recipe for executive failure? High stakes leadership requires messy, non-linear development that quarterly reports cannot capture. There's a lot of soft data and anecdotal data that in qualitative data that is very messy, and to quote Jack Welch, you have to be able to see around corners. What does that mean? Being able to see around corners doesn't come from hard data. I can tell you that right now. Hard data is supplementary to being able to see around corners. Reason why is the hard data gives you some information, and it's one slither of it. You need to sit there and be able to sift through the soft and qualitative data and then combine that to actually see the bits and pieces of what it kind of looks like and where to take the direction. I mean, you're not going to get a full picture, but you're going to get a good enough picture to know where things are going. And so you have to, as leaders, as investors and boards, you have to embrace that capacity. Back in the last, let's say up until 2018-ish, you can make it earlier if you want, but I'll say 2018 is a hard line. The mirage of quarterly safety evaporated because for a long time, for about, let's say, 40 years, between the late 60s and the early 2010s, you could just sit there and play the whole quarterly game. You know, you could sit there and play the shell game, move money around, get contracts pushed forward, you get customers to sign contracts, get revenue in, etc., and everything was fine. You could play the safe game. You could invest X amount that you need to invest, and it was more long term, and you weren't as worried. That era is just over. There's so much happening that you have to be able to understand that this is the direction where things are going. This is how I'm going to adjust. I know I'm going to have to take risks, and I'm comfortable with taking those risks. Not, oh, well, we're going to go the traditional route. We're just going to lay people off for now to see if this technology works. That era is just gone. A really good example. A lot of teams feel that you have a lot of bloat because of the COVID and that overhiring. That is a signal. Believe it or not, if you look back, all you senior leaders, investors, and board of directors, if you do look back, that's a signal. That was telling you something of what is coming. When massive disruption happens, what did you automatically do? You hired people for that growth. I'm telling you right now, that growth is coming. And it's a lot bigger than what happened in COVID or the perception of what happened in COVID. So buckle up because it's coming, and it's going to be one of those things that's going to take everybody by shock. There are some anecdotal pieces of evidence out there. A good example in the job market, a lot of employers are now really saying, I can't find the right talent. There's a reason why. Laying people off and making people averse to your organization and other organizations is not going to really help the cause. A lot of the strategic development that's going to go on from your lower levels all the way to your senior leaders is going to have to be direct investments in their capabilities, in their leadership training, etc. So you have that mirage of quarterly safety. Data addiction provides false sense of control while executive pipeline quietly deteriorates. So what we're talking in this conversation is not only strategic ability of leaders, but developing those leaders and those qualities that leaders want. So, Q2 does not equal Q4. Current market, words, volatility proves that hitting Q2 targets is no longer a reliable predictor of Q4 survival, because things can flip between Q2 and Q4. 6 months is a long ball game in today's world. I mean, look at how fast LLMs are changing. Take that and exponentially drive that. You have the performance trap. Algorithms optimized for short-term efficiency teach leaders to stop taking risks and produce breakthroughs and through innovation. Innovation's dirty. A great example is what's going on in Meta. Mark is trying to really find different ways and groups of how to make things work, and he's just constantly cycling through things. Then you feel that you have a false control. The dashboard is green, the bench is empty, nobody notices it until the pivot arrives. So you think everything is going like the methods of how you run your queues, your quarterly reviews functions correctly, and without noticing that the innovation that's happening around you is completely making a lot of that irrelevant. That false safety, and it's a incredible challenge from a academic practitioner standpoint. This is fascinating for me. I just watching how executives have to like figure it out and look through it. It is just incredible to watch from the sidelines, and then how we sit there and bring society together to our vision instead of, oh, AI is just going to replace you. AI is going to really be augmentative. Um, and how do we bring people on board to make that augmentation happen? The augmentation is going to be exponential. I mean, you're going to have people at some point. Imagine one person managing 200,000 agents, like a CEO of agents. That's the capability of people that you're going to need. And imagine your company growing exponentially. A lot of executives make the mistake that they think, okay, I could replace and I could keep the business as is. Your business has the potential to completely exponentially grow in markets that were too hard to get into, markets that were too low barrier to entry. You can sit there and button up. I mean, there's so many things you can do. So when you have the performance trap, algorithms are optimized for the short term. Efficiency really it is one of the pillars. It's not going away, but efficiency, you have to develop a method of efficiency to create that innovation. But it's very dirty and it's very exploratory. And then you just when you look at the whole dashboard and the false narrative that's around that. I mean, yes, it looks green. You have metrics that you establish, but you also have to learn how to deal with the soft data. What quarterly what the quarter buys and what it costs. So what we buy, predictability. So we humans love predictability. Investors love predictability. And they love narrative. I mean, the big thing of the 2020s is the whole narrative component. Green scorecards, calm boards, incremental defensible wins, comfortable sense of control, what it costs, strategic risk taking, where winning in the 21st century really revolves around is strategic risk taking, and it's quietly withdrawn. Crisis tested judgment never developed. So there's when I say crisis is it's the asymmetric chaos that's going on that executives have to deal with. Empathy and intuition is unrewarded. So being able to have intuition, the biggest think of the 21st century, please write this down, is intuition. If you as an executive, that what Jack Welch said, seeing around corners, that intuition is the big component. If you learn your intuition and where it's guiding, it's something that quantitative data will never be able to truly explain because there's a lot of variables that go into it. There's more variables than columns and rows in a spreadsheet or in any algorithm because there's a lot of soft data points that we as humans can make sense of without even being able to explain it at first. How do we come up with it? And it is the general correct answer of where things are going. Now, the one thing I want to talk to executives about is it doesn't have to be 100% correct. You're looking at 65 to 85% correct direction. You want to be within the vicinity. You're like an artillery shell. You want to be within the vicinity, and typically companies that will land in that vicinity will be very successful. And then you have a succession bench that is more of a rumor than anything. So you have to think of your how you're developing people because eventually they're going to have to replace you and they're going to not have that time to learn how you did it. They're going to have to not only learn what you did but adapt to it right away. The high cost of linear thinking. When success is measured only by what it can be graphed, we lose everything that can be. So you have safety incrementalism rewarded with traditional KPIs. So the regular story that goes on and on. You want KPIs, fearing of messy experimentation. You have nonlinear growth. Metrics are driven by cultures that penalize slow development cycles essential to mastering high stakes crisis manage. Um, so one of the key challenges when you have metrics that are driven and cultures penalize the slow development cycles essential to mastering high state crisis uh, management, what does that mean? So you have to let people experiment with different situations that are high stakes, and oftentimes it's good for them to fail because you learn a lot more in failure. You learn, think of like entrepreneurs, you're constantly pivoting. While in the entrepreneurial sense of your organization, your organizations are going to have to learn how to pivot rapidly and build a workforce that is willing to come along with them on that journey. You're not going to build that workforce and that leadership by not focusing on developing them and providing that security in the sense that if you guys keep developing yourself and we're going to work towards not only keeping you here but elevating you to be more empowered. That's the key. This is one of the key messages that everybody knows should be said, but it's not being said. Unquantifiable is discarded. So you have empathy and intuition, traits that AI can't replicate and never appear on the scorecard. So understanding, putting yourself in other people's shoes. I mean, in leadership, it's talked about for the last, at least ever since I was in college in the early 2000s. Everybody talked about empathy, putting yourself in other people's shoes, and that never really seemed to happen from a leadership perspective, or I should say, leadership or management perspective. As leaders, we have to embrace that. I hate to say it, and I hate to be part of the chorus that says the same thing over and over again. But maybe me saying it in this video will get everybody to embrace that we have to embrace empathy, and then the intuition part. Successful entrepreneurs through all the, look at Elon Musk. What do you think is not only driving him? It's not only the data, but he's got an intuition on how things are going. That's why a lot of you admire him, is he's got an intuition and he's able to sell that intuition into a vision. So you have to sit there and sell that. Like, I know selling Big Macs is not exciting, but the way you're, like, for example, McDonald's is managing its franchise base, its supply chain, its food is not what's going to win. It's not bad. It's just it's what worked before. Now it's about like true innovation. And innovation doesn't have to be a Big Mac with sriracha sauce, but it can be. But how about a better quality Big Mac, one that tastes really good? If I truly have the same Big Mac in Chicago as I do in LA, and it tastes the same, and it's going to be put together the same, that requires a leadership build out not only at the corporate level, but also at the franchisee level. That is really key. A leader who has never allowed to fail cheaply will fail expensively in public. So you have to do a lot of failure. You have to do a lot of, when I say failure, you have to see what doesn't work. When you're learning how to program, there's a lot of, for lack of a better image, head banging on your desk because it's not working. You have to figure out this version of JSON doesn't work, or Node.js version doesn't work, blah, blah, blah. I mean, you have to figure out and you have to work through those processes. There's no I mean, part of it is learning, is sending your team members to executive training and MBA programs, but having them really um, absorb that material. Because I think a lot of executives attend these programs, but don't necessarily absorb that material in the sense of applying it in the workspace. For you executives out there, boards and investors, everything you do learn at the university can be applicable to your business, but not at once and not at every single time. The reason why you learn all these things is because we're planting seeds. As a professor, I'm planting seeds in you, but I'm also giving you ideas of what things that have been developed, what things have shown to work, what things are happening, so that you have a deep knowledge base of how to build that intuition of where things are going. Two leaders, one system produce both. So what we built optimizes inside a reporting window. That's what it's very difficult, but executives are doing it. Green lights the sheet, what the sheet already approved. So there's no thinking beyond of what looks safe. Treats ambiguity as a reporting deficit. So ambiguity is really bad. I mean, obviously you'd want everything clear, but ambiguity is where your blue ocean is, where your opportunities lie, and excellent until the map stops matching. So basically, when the roadmap that you've built doesn't match what's going on in the marketplace, it's a challenge. The visionary architect, what we need, navigates without predetermined script. So it's a skill, I'm telling you. Having that intuition develops that ability to work without the predetermined script. Runs experiments that may not graph well. So you're constantly being iterative in the process. It's very messy. Has been tested under real pressure. So the more messiness you create and you do it, you learn on the cheap. It becomes really incredible under pressure. It's just like a top performer. A lot of you admire those awesome baseball players and hockey players, football players, soccer players, etc. Why do you admire them? Because they can perform under pressure. But they're constantly working on themselves to become better, not only by leadership coaching, but understanding, going back and re-understanding business education, understanding startups, building their own startups. Believe it or not, executive boards should be having their senior leaders try to build a business from scratch to understand what it takes, what kind of innovations could come from that. Maybe it could be something you have an up and coming executive, and then you create a new product and have them build that from scratch as a separate company, and then it can get rolled into your company instead of having to buy it from private equity. One example of that. And then builds the map when the map runs out. So being comfortable navigating being like Galileo and sailing in areas where it's never really been mapped. That's the era that we're in now, and one that we're definitely um, going deep into. The invisible talent gap. So it's the instrument we use to look and cannot detect it. So hidden until it breaks. Rigid performance data obscures systematic succession weakness that only surfaces when major market pivot is too late to fix. So um, when things go wrong and then the board gets rid of the executive inadvertently, because that's typically what happens, your bench is just not there. You haven't developed the next talent. What would be better is the executive team that you currently have has been developed and is running things well, and then gets ready to transition the next team. The best are leaving. So a lot of folks that are really good, and you're kind of perplexed why they leave, and they start out probably either becoming a leader at another company or most likely starting their own company, is because organizations that prioritize spreadsheet green lighting over genuine professional evolution. So yes, it's fine to manage a company by using Power BI or Tableau or spreadsheets or managing it by PowerPoint, but that's kind of the cover of the book. The depth of the book is somebody that's able to really evolve and really build things, not just spending their times in meetings all day. The wrong bench. So spreadsheet managers where visionary architects should be heading into the 2027 projected economic shift. So visionary, you have to be uncomfortable and you have to be dreamer. Oftentimes the real innovators are dreamers. Like when I was starting out in my career, I would sit there and like at my desk, well, I would have done this differently. I would have set it up this way because it's maybe more tax efficient to put the warehouse here. Like for example, I would have never outsourced any of my warehousing or my manufacturing. That is a capability because at the end of the day, you're accountable for it regardless. So it's better to own it. You literally have to have the same type of person that manages the contract manufacturing organization, which you can't sit there and have any control over because it's by contract base. You can you can sue them and you could not pay them, but they can sit there and stop shipping your product. Let's be real of how this really works at the end of the day. The repercussions don't. You want to be the owner of that, but you have to have that ability to dream. You have to have that passion to learn from different businesses and really want to execute. Redefining executive resilience. So you don't want to be margin padding. You want resilient markers, value long-term organizational health over immediate margin protection. No AI narrative selling like, oh, we're reducing our workforce because of AI. No, you know what the narrative should have been? We are building our workforce to be augmented by AI and building our company capability for greater profitability. That's the narrative you should have been selling. And that's those types of narratives, a positive narrative is the one that needs to be sold going forward. We're investing, you're constantly investing. The one thing that people, it's kind of funny because people rather invest in a asset base like a plant than people. People are your most valuable asset. I got to tell you, they're the most adaptable. It's like imagine a production plant that can morph itself into whatever you want it to be. That's what a human is. And they don't eat, they don't take, they bring their own energy to work, meaning they bring their own food. They're willing to even use their own electricity to run your software on there working from home. Think about that. And then you have a checklist of achievements versus portfolio of experience. So a lot of experiences really comes down to live case studies and back and forth understanding what's going on. Confidence in data points, capability and gaps. There's durability is built where leaders navigate ambiguity without a script. So you have to be comfortable being able to navigate ambiguity without having to deal with all these problems. When I say not deal with all these problems, you're able to absorb them because you are comfortable in that environment. The blueprint for future governance. So allow the lagging metric. So give rising executives explicit permission to post softer quarter in exchange for hard lesson. Psychological safety to fail fast and learn deeper. That's going to be key because a lot of quarters in the future are not going to look pretty because it's going to be invest. And look at everybody starting to freak out of all the AI investment. Guys, I'm going to tell you something right now. The AI investment that is happening that investors and everybody's starting to freak out over, it's you're not even at the beginning stages. I mean, this is like warm-ups of what's coming. Extend the horizon to 3 years. So I would even say extend the horizon for 6, 1, 1.5, 2, and 2.5, 3 years. So break it down that way so that you have you develop a comfortable approach to long-term thinking. Boards that replace rigid quarterly scorecards with 3-year strategic growth horizons protect the next generation of thinkers. So it's basically long-term thinking. Embrace the complexity. This is really key. Accept that human growth is nonlinear and it's the only way to build a bench of capable navigating increasingly chaotic landscapes. So that's the only way you're going to do it. Embracing the complexity. It's okay. We know what we're supposed to. The narrative that you're selling to investors at this point is we know what we're doing. This is the vision. This is where we're going. We know what we're doing. And you have to begin to provide some evidence of that. But you can, if you really sit there and think about it and have a innovative understanding of and embrace of chaos, you'll understand where things are heading and how you can sit there and position the ship. So if you can continue to prioritize short-term survival over genuine growth, you are going to sabotage leaders your company will need to survive in the next decade. It's going to be true. Organizations are going to fail at a faster rate in this next decade than ever before. And it's going to be one of those things that as executives and as business leaders and as entrepreneurs, it'll be perplexing. Because they'll be like, wow, this company was doing fine. What happened? What happened well, just to give you an example, something to chew on. You laid off your employees because of quote unquote AI. They didn't want to come back. So then you ended up spending triple the amount to bring them back, or whoever was willing to come back. Then you sat there and had to organize your organization to understand the processes of where your organization delivers value. Then you start implementing technology. While your competitor figured out early on, like, man, I got to retain my people and I got to really build them up and I got to get them really ready for what's going on. And it didn't happen. It didn't happen for you, but for them, they started growing exponentially. You just never caught up, and then you either had to sell yourself for scraps, or you just ceased to function because customers in mass went to your competition. There's going to be really crazy situations coming out and very difficult situations, and it's going to be for me as a business as an employee or as a leader, employee, entrepreneur, and academic. It's going to be a very fascinating next 10 years. I just can't wait to see what's going to happen because I know personally it will happen, but how it's going to happen is going to be really the key interest. I want to say thank you for taking the time to watch this video. If you've liked what you've heard, please subscribe, please leave comments, and I look forward to making more videos in the future. Thanks again, and have a wonderful, wonderful day, evening, or afternoon. Thank you. I'm Paul Buyak, professor, entrepreneur, leader, and thinker.